About 5 months ago, I made the switch over to the macOS ecosystem. Being a Windows user for the past 18 years of my life, it's kind of out of character for me to just switch over to macOS. And what's wild is that I've been using Windows since Windows XP, like some of you guys have not been born yet. But after using macOS for the past 5 months, I think it's never been a better time to switch over to macOS. In this video, I'm gonna go really in depth of my experience switching from Windows to macOS. And if you're on the fence of getting a new machine like a Windows or a Mac, this video might convince you why Mac might be the superior choice. This is why I switched over to Mac. Oh, I stepped in poop. So what initially made me switch over to macOS was the whole Windows 10 losing support thing. For those who don't know what happened, Windows 10 lost update support back in October. And guess whose main PC is still running Windows 10? Me. So my main PC is still running Windows 10 and it was kind of a bummer losing update support, and I for one will not be updating to Windows 11. I'll get into the whole Windows problem later in the video. But more importantly, when a software like Windows 10 goes out of support and when an eventual security exploit surfaces, all Windows 10 machines are now active targets. And having my life's work on an eventual security risk machine doesn't sound too good. And yes, before you guys start typing in the comments, yes, I've already subscribed to Windows Extended Security, which will keep Windows 10 updated for the next 3 years. But beyond that, I started looking for alternatives. And a pretty obvious alternative to Windows is macOS. And also for all you Linux users out there who's already typed in the comments like, why didn't you use Linux? Unfortunately, I use Adobe. Yeah, it's pretty sad. But yeah, macOS it will be. And what's a better way to experience macOS? A Mac Studio. I got myself a Mac Studio. So this is a Mac Studio. I have the privilege of using this machine, which is equipped with an M3 Ultra with 80 GPU cores and enough RAM in this machine to put me on the top of several AI companies' hit list. And I know this machine's kinda overkill, and it's really hard to compare this over-spec Mac Studio to my PC. But most of what I'll be discussing in this video is related to the macOS experience and also a little bit of Apple Silicon. So I've been using this machine for 5 months now, but when I first got this, the setup was really easy. All they really gave you is one power cable in the box, and that's kind of all you need to set this machine up. Of course, you do have to have your monitors and your, peripherals. But after plugging it in and logging into my Apple ID, it was off to the races. Fun fact about the Mac, you can actually set it up without an Apple ID. Of course, it's not recommended because a lot of the features are tied to the Apple ID. But on the other side, with Windows, with the latest update of Windows 11, you can't actually just set it up without a Microsoft account. And yes, there are some loopholes that you can go through to set it up without a Microsoft account, but it's not simple, and they're basically forcing you to set up a Microsoft account. Fun. I already had a MacBook at the time of setting this up, so I do have some prior experience with macOS, although I did use my MacBook mainly for typing scripts. But it wasn't the hardest things to learn macOS again. So after using this machine for 5 months, the third time I'm saying it, let me go through with you my experience of moving to a Mac as a lifelong Windows user. macOS is great, although there is a slight learning curve if you're primarily a Windows user. Most of the apps I use on a daily basis are easily ported over to Mac, also because there are Mac versions of the apps I use, especially Adobe. Funny enough, I actually picked up Adobe because there was a Mac version of it, and I eventually thought one day I might switch over to Mac, and that eventual day came. Forward planning. I know there's DaVinci, but it's pretty hard to learn. But one thing I noticed when I used the apps that I did use on Windows on the Mac is that they barely crash, if not at all. And that's probably because the apps that were made for Mac are slightly more optimized because there are lesser machines to optimize for. But it also could be the lack of optimization on Windows. So editing my videos on Premiere and After Effects were really good, everything was smooth. I did, however, have to rebind all my keys on the keyboard because I was more used to the Windows layout, but that was easily done in the settings. And after my keyboard mimicked the one on Windows, everything felt like home and I was back to editing videos like nothing ever happened. Well, something happened because Premiere stopped crashing. So yeah, the whole process of switching over was really seamless. So speaking of seamless things, the Apple ecosystem is something to talk about. So I found this feature recently and I didn't know it was a feature, but it is a feature. I was on my bed using my MacBook, and at that time my Mac Studio was also on at the same time. And while I was using my MacBook, I realized my cursor kind of disappeared. And I was kind of curious why my cursor just disappeared. Like, did my trackpad die? Well, it turns out my MacBook's trackpad was actually controlling my cursor on the Mac Studio. And so what actually happened was that the MacBook and the Mac Studio connected to each other, and now my peripherals worked seamlessly on both sides. So the trackpad and keyboard on my MacBook is now also controlling my Mac Studio. I was wondering, what if I just dragged files from one side to the other? So I dragged one of my folders on my MacBook to the Mac Studio, and it just transferred. It just works. I don't know, insert video of Tim Cook saying, it works. This was one of the biggest mind-blown moments I've had in a very long time. And I use tech every day, by the way. My middle name is Tech. squashy tech toy. And mind you, I did nothing prior to this. So essentially what happened is that my MacBook and Mac Studio found each other on the same network, connected, synced up the screens, and also talked to each other all seamlessly behind the scenes. And I think that's what they call the Apple magic, because that kind of seamlessness is only found on the Apple ecosystem. And yes, you could probably do this on Windows as well with probably some third-party apps or keyboards or mice, but is it ever as seamless as this?
I just got home from a meeting. Got a bunch of reminders and files on my MacBook I need to edit on my desk. I turn on my Mac Studio. Reminders already there. Files, drag and drop onto the main machine. I open the files and work on them. I try to access websites. OTP needed. I get on my phone. Copy, paste. I log into Twitter. I doom scroll. My renders are done and I need to upload my TikTok. Right click, airdrop. It is now on my phone. I upload the TikTok. I doom scroll. Okay, you get it.
But to fully experience the Mac Studio, you probably gotta get yourself one of these. This is an Apple Magic Trackpad. And why I say you need one of these, macOS actually runs off mostly off gesture. Luckily, these are pretty cheap now. You can find some for like 50 bucks. I found this one in Japan. Shout out Jampara. I do think a lot of the magic behind macOS is behind the gesture system. So I picked the different desktops, pinching and zooming, mission control. That's where you like swipe up and reveal the entire screen. It's a lot more intuitive on a trackpad than pressing control and up arrow or options. One of those, I don't know, I'm not really good at keyboards still. Because you're doing all that with one hand. And the trackpad's integrated really well, like in apps like Premiere Pro, if you've ever used it. You feel little vibrations when you move through the timeline. It's pretty cool. Vibrations. And it's a lot more immersive than having a mouse. Of course, to each its own, I do use the mouse for most of my stuff, and I use the trackpad for daily stuff because it's a lot nicer to just touch a trackpad. And gaming. So I still do most of my gaming on Windows because I have a lot of friends on Windows and it's hard to have games that are cross-compatible. But you will be surprised if you actually looked at the library of games for Mac, because it has been growing and a bunch of the games I play now is just on the Mac as well. Games like Kerbal Space Program, Slay the Spire 2, Cyberpunk, and even new games like NTE or Neverness to Everness. So the whole quote of like Macs can't run games and they're only meant for work is kind of outdated because Macs run games now. And I think if there's more demand for games on Mac, we will definitely see, more games. So I want to talk about Apple Silicon for a bit. So we all know that it's really good and it also can be really powerful if it wanted to be. But I want to focus on two things: how quietly it runs and how power efficient it can be. And this is all thanks to the architecture of the chip. All Apple Silicon chips are running the architecture known as ARM or ARM. And ARM chips are basically stuff that you'll find on like phones and tablets. So we technically can call my MacBook, the M5 MacBook, which I love a lot, is technically running a phone chip. And you can technically call tea soup, but we don't really call tea soup now, do we? Soup. Oh, it's so hot. Your average consumer doesn't really understand how efficient ARM chips are. Like if I tell my mom, she's like, ARM? What's that? So chips based off the ARM architecture generally draw a lower TDP. That stands for technically drawn power. It does not mean that. Here's what it actually means. And to compare an M5 chip on my MacBook to a similar chip of a similar performance in the x86 architecture, that means Intel AMD chips, the M5 chip draws a measly 15 watts of power for a general use, and the x86 chip draws about 45 watts of power just to get the same performance as 15 watts. So with the lesser power draw of the M5 chip, you get less heat, which means less cooling, which means less sound, because less fan. And that also means a longer battery life, because less power. And I think the best part about the MacBook that I use is that it performs the same whether plugged in or plugged out, because the battery life of my MacBook is so good that whenever I pull it on my back, it just works. I'm never worried that the MacBook's out of battery because most of the time it's still going to perform at 20%. And fun fact, the battery life performance is why I got my first MacBook, which was the MacBook Air M1. And then we look at the other side, Windows. You have laptops that barely last 3 to 4 hours a day, and my desk laptop sounds like a jet engine just on PowerPoint, and it isn't even a demanding load. And don't get me wrong, Windows does also have ARM chips. We have Qualcomm chips that have Windows ARM on it, but the problem with that is that the compatibility on Windows ARM is not exactly the same as macOS, because Mac kind of pre-planned this like 2 years ahead with the whole silicon change. So let's translate this to my Mac Studio. I didn't bring it, I don't know why you thought I brought it. A machine as capable, or if not even more capable than my big machine, but with the benefits of ARM now. So here's the sound of my PC starting up. And before you go comment like, oh my god, there's so many fans compared to like one fan, that's not fair. Well, the PC kind of needs that fans because even at idle, it's sitting at 60 degrees. I literally just started my PC and somehow idling at 53, 40. There's nothing even going on, man. Nothing's running. Well, welcome to Singapore temperature. And mind you, I have a 360mm RAD. RAD stands for radiator. And here's the sound of my Mac Studio starting up. absolute silence. Also, by the way, my PC is running directly off the wall plug because it needs 850 watts of power, and my Mac Studio is running off the extension cord in my table because it runs off 270 watts on max load. It's kind of insane. So you can kind of see the power difference, like 850 watts and 270 watts. I don't even think 270 watts is enough for my RTX 4070 Ti. Editor Nav, fact check that.
It's true.
Now, this might not be a problem for some of you guys that live in a colder climate. And if anything, this could be actually a plus that your PC is generating more heat, because I know it gets cold sometimes in the colder area. And the PC kind of works like a space heater in your room. But not here in Singapore, nah. We experience 2 seasons, summer and rain. And throughout the entire seasons, it's like 33 degrees weather at all times. For you Americans out there, it's about like 350 degrees Fahrenheit. With my PC and AC on, my AC struggles to cool my room down because my PC just runs so hot. And my PC is not even like the top spec PCs. Like imagine a 5090 in my room, like it's gonna melt. So that's why my PC kind of runs at like, 90 degrees as I said earlier. And don't even talk about when my PC is like rendering a 3D render, because I'm not gonna get any sleep in that heat. So having my main work machine, the Mac Studio, and having it run so quietly and cool at all times, and the only time it ever heats up is when I'm playing Slay the Spire 2 or like NTE. It's kind of unreal because now I up my temperature of my AC because it's just so cold. So that point might not be relevant to everyone, but it's really relevant to me. And if you ever use the Mac Studio on AI related stuff, it does get warm like I said, but it's never gonna get as hot as like a 5090 running like Gemma 4 or something. The speed might not be the same, but for the work I'm doing, like editing and like 3D rendering, Mac Studio is more than enough for what I need. Heck, even the M5 MacBook is more than what I need. So yeah, thumbs up for Apple Silicon. Yo, I forgot to add this into the software part of this video. If you ever use an M series chip, you know what an SoC is. If you don't know, it's system on a chip. What that means is the RAM of your PC is kind of soldered into the chip itself, and so is everything else like the GPU and the CPU. And what that allows you to do, and this is very relevant in our day and age of AI. What it allows you to do is to use the RAM as VRAM. VRAM is video memory, and it's more than ever relevant because AI only uses VRAM because it is the fastest sort of RAM that you have. So with the ever-growing space of AI, a lot of bigger AI models like Qwen 3, Gemma 4, of DeepSeek R1, they use so much VRAM that even a 5090 kind of struggles to like keep everything in. And that's kind of the nature of AI. But see, here's the difference with my Mac Studio. So my Mac Studio has 512 gigabytes of RAM. And what that means is that I can preload the entire DeepSeek R1 onto my machine. And with its like 401 like million parameters or something, I don't know AI that much. I can load the entire AI model onto the max VRAM, or RAM in this case, because of SoC. And if you're from the AI space, you probably know that people are stacking up Mac Minis now to like combine the VRAM. But if you're ever thinking of running an AI, a MacBook literally can have more VRAM than any other machine out there. And RAM's expensive now, if you didn't know. Also, I got this machine before the whole RAM crisis. Shout out to me, I guess. Oh yeah, and one more thing the SoC can get you, secure enclave. Basically what that means is the machine's more secure. The security chip is literally physically in the M series chip itself, and I really don't understand it, but the machine's more secure. If you're interested, you can read it here. You can pause the video. Too late. So yeah, that's the benefits of having an SoC, system on a chip. Windows. This is the part of the video where I talk about Windows. And to be completely honest, a lot of the things I pointed out in this video, like the software experience or like the hardware being so quiet, all this can be had on Windows as well with a lot of tinkering and technical experience. Like if you want a small form factor of a Mac Studio, that's an ITX PC and it runs great. But, and this is a huge but, like look how big the but is. Windows itself was kind of the reason why I wanted to find and jump ship to a different OS. So here is a real world example of what happened to me recently. I got home from a busy day of whatever I do outside. I turned on my PC. While waiting for it to boot, I went to take a shower. Thinking that the PC would be ready for me by the time I come back, I took my time showering. And lo and behold, I came back to the PC telling me I should update to Windows 11. Okay, so I was curious. I was like, okay, sure. Like, you've told me a couple million times that Windows 11 is much better than Windows 10. And I was like, cool, yeah, no, I don't want Windows 11 like the, couple hundred times I told you the past 3 years. And so I politely declined, and then it hit me with a different screen, at this point kind of begging me to download Windows 11. It's even funnier that they just like slapped an ad on it because they were like, yo, Copilot experience. If you can't get it, move over to a Windows machine that can, which you can find at like the Microsoft store. So yeah, it's just an ad for Copilot, I guess. And so apparently one decline isn't enough, so I declined the second time, only to realize my PC started booting up after I declined. So this was happening before the Windows OS, like Windows 10, was even loaded. So what was my machine doing the whole time I was taking the damn shower? So Windows right now is infuriating to use. And Windows 11 right now is riddled with bugs and other ads like Copilot. I have no idea why they're pushing Copilot so much, like it literally doesn't make sense. By the way, do you know OneDrive actually deletes your files if you back them up incorrectly? I don't know how it's not malware. Look at this, it happens right here. So I posted a short a couple months ago of why I switched to macOS, and I was talking about how Windows 10 was like still kind of buggy and stuff. And a lot of people were also saying like, why don't I try Windows 11 first before I like complain about it? Don't diss it till you try it. Well, firstly, the sky is so nice. Wait, what? Okay, firstly, I don't need to become a smoker to know that it's bad for you. And secondly, I've tried Windows 11 and I can confirm it still sucks. The ads on Windows 11, like when you start the start menu and there's just like ads to like download Microsoft stuff, and the bug-filled wasteland that is like Windows 11, it's so bad that it's come to a point that people online are saying that Windows 11 is vibe coded. And I'm not surprised if it is. Well, credit where credit is due, I think Windows 11 is very aesthetic and I actually do like the look of Windows 11. But with the constant forced updates of Microsoft and like the other things that they force on you, like Copilot, like why was Copilot in Notepad? They've removed it since then, but why was Copilot in the Notes app? Here's another example of what recently happened. If you notice, all new Windows laptops that are AI equipped has this new Copilot button. And I have nothing against a dedicated Copilot button, like if you like to roll like that, you roll like that. But the fact that they had to put it right next to a really high traffic button, the left arrow. And apparently it's a must to put it there. What I'm thinking is that Microsoft's trying to get more Copilot users by putting it right next to the arrow button so that you accidentally bump it when you're like trying to go back on an email that you mistyped, and then Copilot pops out and it's like, yay, new active user. But the bottom line is that I didn't feel like Windows 10 was welcoming or improving alongside my workflow. It's kind of like a bad landlord trying to chase you out of the property you just rented. So when I was writing this video, I didn't actually plan for the MacBook Neo to be entering the market. And I think it kind of changed the scene a lot because right now, it's literally never been a better time to change to a Mac or the macOS ecosystem. Because what was a really pricey entry point of like $800 to $900, because that was the price of a MacBook Air at the time, it's now $599 or $499 if you're a student to get a MacBook Neo. And the MacBook Neo is literally the best-in-class portable laptop right now that you can get, that it's in this price point. So yeah, final statements, Apple Silicon is an absolute powerhouse. macOS wasn't really hard for me to learn. And if not for gaming and my friends on Windows, my PC would have retired the day I got this Mac Studio. And it's kind of crazy for me to say that, but it's true. I spend 95% of my time now on the Mac Studio, and if there's a Mac version of the game I'm playing on Windows, like Slay the Spire, I'm on Mac. But yeah, that's why I switched to Mac. Like this video if you enjoyed it. It's not really my usual content, but I think rants are pretty fun.